In this video, I'm going to go over the product cost table. All right, so this is a bit of a monster table, but hopefully we can get through this together and you can do a good job of it as well. So the way that it's set up is that I have a part number and then the description of what I'm making. And then I have a part quantity per unit. So this would be per unit of one electrical box final assembly. So if I'm producing one of these, I have one here, and then it's saying that I have, one cake box, one front cover, 8 tech screws. And this data comes from the product structure diagram. All right, and then I have extended quantity. And extended quantity comes from how many are on the order quantity. So if we open up this cell here, I'm saying it's 1 times an order quantity of 15. Okay, and so 1 times 15 is 15, and so on and so forth as it goes down. All right. So now I have like a table within a table here, and this is the labor by work center. So you can add in work centers here, you can take work centers away, or just not use them and just, not put any information into it. Okay, so I'll just go through one part. Here we have a cake box, and we have a setup. It goes through cutting, and then it goes through forming. Just highlight the cell here. It goes through forming. It doesn't go through assembly, and it doesn't go through painting, which might be confusing to you because of course this part goes through assembly. Of course it gets painted, but it becomes the assembly when it goes through assembly, and it becomes the assembly, the top level assembly, when it goes through painting. So that's why we leave, for the cake box, we leave this blank for assembly and painting. All right, so let's go get into the specifics of this cutting here. All right, so the cake box gets cut for an order of 15. The setup time is 0.5. All right, and that's just an entered value. All right, but now I have a runtime as well. And if we look inside this formula, it says it takes 1 minute, all right, times 15 units. So my runtime is based on how many units I have times the measured 1 minute. All right, so it ends up being 15 minutes. So the total minutes is 15.5 minutes, and then the work center costs are calculated. All right, so the work center costs are calculated by the total minutes multiplied by the hourly rate, and then divide that hourly rate by 60, because we are working in minutes. All right. All right, and so we want to get the costs in the same time unit, and that's how we do it. We divide it by 60. All right, so now I can see the work center cost of this part. So it's $3.94 to make to cut the cake box for 15 parts. That's how much it's going to cost. All right, and similarly, this is what happens through forming. All right, so we have a 2-minute setup this time. We have it only takes 0.3 minutes to make one part. But we have to multiply that by 15 because we have 15 parts on the order. All right, and so it ends up being 6.5 minutes. So through forming, we spend about 1.198 to form 15 parts. All right. And so assembly is $0 because we don't have any time for the cake box, but we do for the final assembly. So here's the final assembly here. We'll keep going along this cell. All right, so the setup time is 0.16 minutes for one assembly, but the runtime is two minutes for each assembly. However, we have to multiply it by the order quantity here. All right, so the work center cost of making 15 units is $7.42. And then painting, we have quite a big setup time, but it only takes 1 minute to paint each one. And again, we have to multiply it by the extended quantity here. And then finally, all of these costs get rolled in. So I'm summing up the work center costs of each work center for that part, whether there is a cost or not. It's just a standard formula. So if you're adding anything in here or taking something away, you better check this formula just to make sure it's correct. All right. And so all of these costs here get summed up at the bottom. All right, so that is kind of the end table of the labor cost portion of this table. All right. Another thing that's interesting is that we get the total cost of cutting for all parts down at the bottom here. So we have total cost here. Now, one thing that you may think is confusing is that we seem to have paint here, and if we follow this paint along the work center, it has zero cost even through the painting work center. And that's because we may be using paint, but we are not painting paint. We are painting an electrical box final assembly. All right. So I hope that clarifies that sort of issue. All right. Then finally, we have this material cost table. All right. And so it says that we use we have material per part, and then we have material quantity, and that is, the material per part is we use 0.125. That comes from right here. So we use 0.125 in the cake box assembly. And then we multiply this 0.125 by the 15 units. All right. And then we get our material cost. And the material cost is multiplies the total material used for this order multiplied by the unit of measurement conversion. This is the cost of the material that we use per the unit of measurement conversion used in the factory, and then we add in the scrap rate. So that is shown in this formula right here. All right, and so all of these get added up right here, and those cost $189.59. All right, and so we see that it's $30 goes to labor, $189.59 goes to material. Those get added up, and we get a total cost for 15 units, $219.61. And the cost per part, which is per assembly, is $14.64. Now, one more confusing thing that I should bring up is that there is no cost for the assembly. All right, when we talk about the material, and that's because the assembly itself is made up of all these other things. So we wouldn't want to charge for the assembly and all of these things, because we'd probably be charging double, because all of these things go into the assembly. So we don't charge the material for the assembly because we've already charged for it for all of its individual components. All right. Now, one more thing I want to indicate here is that because we are, we are making more than one, our setup time impacts the product costs even less. Okay, the setup time, it is what it is. All right. And so if we're making one part, it's going to take 15 minutes of setup for painting, whether we're painting one part or if we're painting 15 parts. So let's look at the cost of one part. So I'll change order quantity to 1. And our per part cost is $21.08. That's significantly more expensive. And that's because, we're paying all the setup time for just one part. We could group that setup time into, an order of 100. Let's see what our cost is. $14.25. So we just saved around $7 just by improving our quantity cost. And that's kind of a general rule, is that you can get better profits, or you can reduce your costs if you have higher order quantities. And that's because we're sort of batching the setup time into a whole bunch of parts instead of just one part being made. All right, so I hope this is enough information for you to complete your costing spreadsheet example on your project. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll answer them as soon as possible.